Hey everybody, this is Terry Gant from Third Coast Comics in Chicago, Illinois. I'm starting up this vlog again. I started it years ago and then I kind of like abandoned it, and I'm not really entirely sure what I'm going to actually call it now that I'm starting it up again. I don't know, but I think that there's enough conversations that I have in the shop in general around like certain issues in comics that I think it might be worth sharing with like the world at large, you know? So I'm going to do that. And one of those things, I guess today's topic is going to be things that I find kind of completely unnecessary in comics versus things that I'm actually pretty happy to see in comics that I think comics needs more of. Things that I'm unhappy with are like, right now, DC Comics kind of all about Batman. They're basically Batman comics. That'd be called BC Comics for as much Batman as they put out. And since Batman is the big seller, I kind of get it, but I also kind of I really wish that big time anniversary issues, like annuals and things like that, were really about sort of culminating, like finishing up stories and big storylines that have been going on a long time. Like annuals and big special issues should be like something that matters to something that's already been happening in the book, so that readers who've already been reading the book can kind of like have that kind of big climax, or they could like have some payoff for all their effort and support in the title, you know? So I wasn't entirely happy with the way that Detective Comics number 1027 came about, in that largely it's sort of a book that gives a lot of people a lot of work, which is great. A lot of really talented artists and writers worked on this book. A lot of talented creators worked on the book, but it isn't really related to sort of what Batman's kind of all been about, which is kind of milking the shit out of you with like Joker War and Three Jokers and that sort of thing. Not that I think that more shit needs to be milked out of you per se, but it basically becomes an issue of Detective Comics that you can kind of like, you can read, you can enjoy. I don't know if you can bag and board it, it's kind of big, but like you can kind of yada yada to get to whatever Detective Comics 1028 is, which more than likely then will continue what you've already been reading in Detective Comics. A book that I think kind of did it well, at least, was the horribly unnecessary, extra-sized Amazing Spider-Man number 49 here, or number 850, depending on how Marvel wants you to think about it. And it's supposed to be an anniversary issue for Spider-Man, but okay, whatever. It at least is continuing a storyline that's been going on in Spider-Man. So while we're supposed to be at an anniversary issue or a legacy number, big legacy number, signpost kind of issue, it at least matters for Spider-Man readers who've been reading Spider-Man. Things that happened or that have come out that I actually really support. I support a new edition, a new hardcover edition of Mr. Miracle, which is one of the better books that's come out in the last couple of years. So, like, if you've never read Mr. Miracle, this deluxe edition is a fantastic way to read it, because it's one of the best comics, best 12-issue series that like I've seen in a long time. So I support a new edition of this thing coming out and hitting the market. And I think we really got a new edition to hit the market because, well, they didn't want to print more of them and then have to have Diamond have to sell them too. So somehow let's just print our own, which Diamond has none of. So when Diamond's out of stock, good luck on getting Mr. Miracle from them. You got to go through DC guys to get it. So maybe it's a little bit of a screw you to the former distributors of DC Comics, but whatever. I think that, you know, I'll take it because it's a great format. It's a great series. I think that I'm also glad to see books in the industry like Seen by Edmonia Lewis. It's true stories of marginalized trailblazers, right? I carry books like this in my shop because there's a lot of people who come in here who don't want to do Batman. They don't want to do the X-Men, although the current X-Men is really good. Like, they don't want to do those titles. They want to do stories about something that kind of matters, that's more rooted in like real world issues or things that have happened or history or something like that. Like things that like they see themselves in. Like, we carry those kind of comics because they ought to be carried. There ought to be more books out there like that. These stories are getting told, and I'm kind of happy about it, and it does work well for us, so I'm thrilled to be supporting it. And then there's also, from the Nib, Be Gay, Do Comics, which is like, I guess for the north side of Chicago, where my store is located, I know a lot of gay comics artists, and so shit, like if anything's supporting that, like do more of it, right? Like I don't mind at all, like kind of getting out there and just saying, hey, listen, guys, like get your work done, get your work out there. I kind of consider anyone who is currently working in comics, anyone who gets a comic done, to be talented. The only difference might be sometimes like whether or not you've really fully synthesized everything you need to know in order to get that comic done, right? Like in order to get it done well. And the independent comics market is so strong right now that there's all kinds of stuff out there, and there's just all kinds of ways to tell your story. And we're not just at having to read the stories of people who grew up reading Batman and Superman. We're now at people who grew up reading Anders Nielsen, or who grew up reading like Dan Clowes, or who grew up reading Jill Thompson's work, or who grew up reading like Sandman. Like we're at the point where we're literally able to basically tell any kind of stories we want. So your stories are out there. Let's see them. I want to see your stories. I'm not gay, but I absolutely don't mind reading stories of people people who don't look like me, and people who do look like me, and people who grew up different than I do, or people who have different orientations than me. I want to read your stories, right? So I guess for this particular episode, that's it. So before my camera or my phone starts telling me it's out of space, I'm going to sign off. This is Terry Gant from Third Coast Comics at 6443 North Sheridan Road in Chicago, Illinois. And thanks a lot. And I'll talk to you next time.